The two of them were teammates and would naturally share the information of the items they obtained. Fu Wenduo said, it can store 4 inanimate items apart from props. It was discovered that everyone's chicken nest wasn't the same. You? Tang Mo nodded. Sure enough. I can only store 3 items. In the supermarket, I saw that Xiao Jitong's nest is smaller than mine. Your chicken nest is bigger than mine. It can store 4 things while I can only store 3. Xiao Jitong and Ning Ning have smaller chicken nests and might have fewer stored items. Our props are the same but the item level is different. There are high and low levels. Therefore, the number of items that can be stored is different. Fu Wenduo leaned against the wall and looked down at Tang Mo. Props can't be stored, so the function of this chicken nest is greatly reduced. But its note is interesting. Upon hearing this, Tang Mo carefully looked at the note for the chicken nest. In the spring, I planted an egg in the chicken nest, and in the autumn, I can harvest a group of eggs. Tang Mo read this sentence twice before looking up at Fu Wenduo, shocked once he understood the meaning. You mean, the items in this nest can multiply? Fu Wenduo's lips curved. It doesn't mention this in the function, but there are generally 2 types of black tower notes. The first type is useless and is pure ridicule. For example, the remark for the magic boots that we got from the iron shoemaker has no meaning. Second, there are notes that seem to imply something. For example, the note on the turkey egg. Tang Mo raised an eyebrow. I don't know the note for the turkey egg. The matter was long known by Fu Wenduo. When he and Tang Mo just met, Tang Mo kept trying to get information about the use of Momo from him. Fu Wenduo was keenly aware of this and hid the information. If it wasn't for the use of the turkey egg that required both of them to operate it at the same time, Fu Wenduo might not contact Tang Mo ever again, and Tang Mo wouldn't know the use of the egg. Fu Wenduo wanted to tell Tang Mo the remark on the turkey egg only to stop speaking. Tang Mo was waiting to hear Fu Wenduo's words. Once the other person suddenly stopped, he looked curiously at Fu Wenduo. What is it? Fu Wenduo, prop, Momo. Remark, as a Chinese person in a new era, what is Momo? Do you have a B point in your heart? What is Momo? Fu Wenduo had been in the army for nearly a decade and actually knew the answer. He originally wanted to say that the turkey egg's note gave them a hint. This turkey egg had more than one owner. It was like a chat software and required 2 masters to interact, and open the archiving function at the same time, in order to operate correctly. But he ended up not saying this. What was the B point in their hearts? Fu Wenduo's expression was very agitated at this time. Tang Mo looked at him and felt there was something strange. It was rare for him to be so helpless, and Mr. Fu said calmly, Momo's note told me that this turkey egg doesn't have only one master. At that time, I didn't expect to have such magical props and I didn't think in this direction. But the note was meaningful and could even be said to play a decisive role in the use of the turkey egg. Tang Mo looked at Fu Wenduo and didn't get involved any further in this issue. Since the remark of the props might be a description of the props function, Tang Mo said, then we will put something in to see if it can be duplicated. This thing is still very important. For example, you can store many bullets or some things that are important and shouldn't be taken away. 4 months ago, Tang Mo encountered a stowaway with unlimited bullets at the middle school. In fact, his bullets weren't infinite, but he had a very large number. This stowaway was killed by the little fatty and Tang Mo couldn't get his ability. The checkmate ability consumed Tang Mo's health and he couldn't use many bullets at once. However, Fu Wenduo could use this prop to store his bullets. In addition, Tang Mo had a thought. How big are the items that can be stored? The 2 people bowed their heads and looked at the palm-sized mini chicken nest in the palm of their hands. Without further ado, Tang Mo walked to the depths of the factory and found an abandoned broken table. He held the table in one hand, gently lifted it up and placed it on the chicken nest. The next second, there was a dazzling white flash of light. Once Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo opened their eyes again, the broken table disappeared. Tang Mo said, this chicken nest doesn't look at size when storing things. It can store really large objects. Fu Wenduo nodded slightly. He didn't speak as his eyes stared straight at the chicken nest in Tang Mo's palm. Tang Mo followed his gaze. He saw that in the small chicken nest, an egg the size of a fingernail appeared. A lone white egg lay in the chicken nest, several lines appearing on the eggshell. Tang Mo took a closer look as the texture deepened and finally became a small table pattern. Tang Mo never imagined that there would be an egg in the chicken nest. He wasn't sure about the egg's identity, if it was a table or a real egg. He looked at Fu Wenduo and the 2 people stared at each other. Tang Mo slowly turned the chicken nest upside down, wanting to see if the egg would fall to the ground. However, the egg didn't fall. Tang Mo looked at the chicken nest with surprise. He reached out and tried to take the egg out of the chicken nest. His hand entered normally and it was very easy to take out this egg. The egg emitted a dazzling white light and Tang Mo put the egg on the ground. A moment later, the egg became a table again. Tang Mo thought, the items stored in the chicken nest will become eggs. It is unaffected by gravity, won't move without being touched and is similar to being fixed in a chicken nest. Take it out and it will become the same item. Fu Wenduo said, put the table in again and I will try and take it out. Tang Mo nodded. Fu Wenduo grabbed the egg with 3 fingers and tried to forcefully pull it out. After 5 seconds, he withdrew his hand and looked at Tang Mo, I can't get this egg. You try taking it from mine. Fu Wenduo put a chair in his chicken nest. Tang Mo reached in but couldn't take it out. They experimented with various ways of taking out the egg and finally concluded. Only the owner of the prop can take the item out. The way to take it out is limited to the hand. The size of the item stored is unrestricted and the hot and cold temperatures are automatically saved. They studied inside the factory for one night. The next morning, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo calmly walked through the factory and found Xiao Jitong. Xiao Jitong smiled when he saw them. Is the chicken nest good? Tang replied lightly, it is very useful. You. Xiao Jitong laughed. Good. It is a very practical prop. Neither side spoke about the results of their study on the chicken nest. Tang Mo came here with Xiao Jitong to find Fu Wensheng. Last night before they separated, Xiao Jitong said that he sent people to contact the Nanjing group and find out where Fu Wensheng was in order to let him come over as soon as possible. Originally, Tang Mo wanted to say that he and Fu Wenduo could go and there was no need for Fu Wensheng to come over. Xiao Jitong laughed and said, he will come anyway to give us the reward for the big turkey instance. It turned out to be child labor. Tang Mo no longer refused. Xiao Jitong said, according to the time, he should have come over by now. If you wait, he will be here in 1 hour. Tang Mo nodded lightly. He didn't say anything and turned to look at Fu Wenduo. Fu Wenduo found that Tang Mo was watching himself and put his hands in his pocket. He looked at Tang Mo with ease and smiled, what is it? Tang Mo replied, nothing. Why did it feel like it was better off without Fu Wenduo as a big brother? Tang Mo left these strange thoughts behind. Xiao Jitong soon left the factory with Ning Ning in order to complete another normal instance. Only Xiao Qiao and Xiao Wei were left in the strategy group space. Xiao Qiao wasn't fluent in Chinese. He sat to the side and kept fiddling with all types of strange props. Xiao Wei looked timidly at Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo and finally stopped looking at Fu Wenduo's body. Fu Wenduo watched her. Xiao Wei immediately said, I wasn't looking at you. I'll tidy up the report. I'll finish the report. Xiao Qiao shouted, teacher, help me look at this prop. Xiao Wei quickly ran to him. Fu Wenduo had a high strength and the achievement of being first to clear the Black Tower's second floor. The attitude of ordinary players towards Fu Wenduo was divided into two types. For example, Xiao Qiao knew who he was and stared at him several times. Finally, he recalled Fu Wenduo's performance against the turkey and decided to ignore him. Then there was Xiao Wei. The strength difference was too big and she didn't dare touch him. Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo were waiting in the factory for an hour when footsteps were heard at the door. Tang Mo looked curiously while Fu Wenduo was calm, showing no excitement. The footsteps got closer and closer. Once the tall figure appeared at the door, Fu Wenduo raised an eyebrow while Tang Mo asked with surprise, it isn't Fu Wensheng. The person who came in was a tall and strong man. He was the one who Xiao Jitong arranged to send a message. The Nanjing group was a bit far from here so a messenger was needed when the two groups wanted to contact each other. This man was a member of the Nanjing group. He said, I went there a bit late. He has already entered an instance this morning. Ah, you are the ones looking for Xiao Sheng? Who are you? Fu Wenduo said, I am his brother. The big man was surprised. Xiao Sheng has an older brother. He laughed. Ha ha ha, are you Fu Wenduo? Xiao Qiao and Xiao Wei were stunned while Fu Wenduo didn't blink. I am Fu Wengxian. I am joking. The members of the Nanjing group often like to tease Xiao Sheng about this. His reaction is very funny. Since Captain Xiao doesn't doubt you then you definitely aren't a bad person. You are also Xian Sheng's family member. He also took Tang Mo as related to Fu Wensheng and Tang Mo didn't refute it. There was no need to explain this thing and make things more troublesome. The man said, it might take a few days for him to come back. Do you want to come to the Nanjing group to wait for him? He must return to the base after the instance. Xiao Jitong and Ning Ning weren't in the base of the strategy group. Xiao Qiao was only 9 years old while Xiao Wei trembled every time she saw Fu Wenduo. Tang Mo agreed with this man's proposal. They didn't need to stay with the strategy group. They could go to the Nanjing group to wait for Fu Wensheng. Moreover, Tang Mo wanted to see the powerful player who could suppress all of Nanjing's players and turn Nanjing into a greenhouse. Before leaving, Tang Mo went to Xiao Qiao and asked, do you have a complete map of Nanjing that you can give me? Xiao Qiao walked to a large box and looked inside for a long time before taking out a huge map. Here, I'll give it to you. Tang Mo took the map. Fu Wenduo eyed Tang Mo and didn't say anything. Soon, the two people left the factory with the man from the Nanjing group. It was the beginning of spring and the weather started to gradually warm. The warm spring breeze blew through the sycamore trees on both sides of Nanjing's road, blowing the landmark sycamore trees. Tang Mo walked to a crossroad where he saw a middle-aged man with a flustered expression. His body was covered with blood and he turned to run when he saw the Tang Mo trio. The big man shouted at the sight but then moved on with Fu Wenduo and Tang Mo. The warm wind blew and the sycamore trees shook. Nanjing was too big and the government on Earth couldn't completely suppress killings. It was even more impossible for the Nanjing group to do this. There must be some nasty things under the surface of Nanjing's peace and tranquility but it was rare in this city. Tang Mo looked up at the sky while a low male voice was heard in his ears. Wait until we reach the place and then look at your egg. Tang Mo turned to look at Fu Wenduo with surprise. Fu Wenduo looked at him with a deep gaze. He spoke so softly that the big man walking in front couldn't hear it. Tang Mo nodded. Okay. They wanted to see if the chicken nest could really duplicate items. The three people quickly moved in the direction of the Nanjing group. Meanwhile, in a magnificent narrow corridor. The corridor was paved with beautiful gems, like a starry sky. The gems gathered to form a magnificent river. There was the sound of fighting in the depths of the corridor, with someone speaking dirty words. Then 3 men quickly ran out of the corridor, away from the guard's attack range. The 3 men collapsed on the ground. 2 of the 3 men were blonde foreigners while the remaining one was a middle-aged man with dark eyes. Once the 2 foreign men had rested, the young man raised his hand and said in English, "My hand is hurt. I can't go on like this. David, have you found a way to get out of here?" The foreign man could. David replied, "I don't get it. We've been here for 2 hours and we can't get out of this damn corridor. Oh Pete, if we meet a few more scary guards then we'll die in their hands." The 2 foreign men were silent. The Chinese man sitting on the side gasped for a long time when he suddenly heard no sound. He shook with fear and turned to look at the 2 people. David smiled and spoke in awkward Chinese, "At the next intersection, you will check the path." The middle-aged man's eyes widened but before he could speak, Pete raised his hand. He gave a hostile smile, "You have stuck with us and now you should do something." What is the word in Chinese? "Sacrifice yourself for us, my dear Chinese friend." The middle-aged man's had long lost their focus, like he had been tortured by something for countless years. He first pulled the sleeves of the 2 foreigners, begging them to spare him. After receiving their merciless ridicule, he gradually gave up. He numbly stood up, heading to another intersection with stiff feet. His feet dragged on the ground, almost like he was crawling. Soon, frantic cries came from the hole. There was the sound of a sharp blade cutting flesh as well as the man's cry. He kept shouting a name. David listened for a bit and used his slight Chinese proficiency. "Shan? Why is he calling out Shan? It means a mountain. Does he like to climb mountains? Ha ha ha, if he survives then he can go to Monster Valley. There are many mountains to climb there." There were 3 roads. They determined that 2 roads were wrong so they would naturally go down the last road. The 2 foreign men rested a moment before standing up, preparing to go to the right side hole that remained. They had taken 2 steps when they heard a sound from the hole that the middle-aged man had entered. The 2 men looked in amazement. They saw the middle-aged man struggling to crawl out of the hole with his hands. His legs were cut and bloody. His face was covered with tears and snot as he shouted Shan while climbing out. The Queen of Hearts guards were chasing him and he managed to climb out at the last moment, falling to the ground and at the feet of the 2 foreigners. He grabbed Pete's trousers. "Please, help me. Save me." Pete's eyes shone with surprise. "David, this man actually ran out to give me 10 minutes of rest time. Thank God, how can there be such a kind and merciful person? Then I'll take the 10 minutes for free." David hastily said, "Why are you taking my 10 minutes? However, he wasn't as fast as Pete. Pete pulled out a sharp dagger and pierced the heart of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had long been madly shouting Shan. Once the dagger penetrated his heart, his eyes widened and blood almost burst from his eyes. After a long time, he seemingly laughed with relief. He laughed as his face fell to the ground, shouting Shan with his last breath. Pete removed the dagger and turned away. David scolded him before reluctantly following. Pete was just walking by the body when he stopped. "Wow, this bracelet is good. Is it a specialty of China?" As Pete spoke, he stripped the red agate bracelet from the middle-aged man's hand. He looked at it before putting it around his wrist. "David, it looks good. Do you want to wear it?" David glanced at him coldly. "I just want my 10-minute break." Pete laughed and the 2 of them continued down the path. 10 days later, Nanjing. Tang Mo originally thought that Fu Wenzheng would come out of the instance in a few days. He didn't expect to wait for 10 days. During this period of time, Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo became familiar with several members of the Nanjing group. Fu Wenduo's identity wasn't revealed since Xiao Jitong said not to tell the Nanjing group. Tang Mo and Fu Wenduo also wouldn't take the initiative to reveal it. "Hey, Tang Mo, Fu Wengxian, we are going to do the 173rd instance. Do you want to come?" A tall black man waved to Tang Mo and shouted. Tang Mo didn't answer when a young man standing next to the black man joked. "Don't let them. They get the rewards every time they join. I don't want to play games with them anymore. Tang Mo, you and Xiao Sheng's brother have eaten all the meat. Can't you leave some broth for us?" Tang Mo thought before replying. "We just left the instance yesterday so we will rest today. But, perhaps I should go today and save some broth for you." The man laughed. "Shut up." Then he pulled his partner and ran, not giving Tang Mo a chance to reply. In fact, Tang Mo didn't want to take back in this instance. He planned to practice his shooting today. Tang Mo's time with the gun wasn't long. He had practiced for a while and could now accurately hit a fixed target. However, some mistakes would appear when shooting a moving target. He couldn't make any mistakes or the checkmate ability wouldn't work and it might cause harm to himself. Tang Mo took Fu Wenduo's handgun, prepared to go to the shooting range. Fu Wenduo asked, "Do you want me to come with you?" Tang Mo's feet stopped and he replied in a decisive tone. No. Fu Wenduo smiled and didn't say anything else. Tang Mo felt that his marksmanship was quite good now but it depended on who he compared again. He was a lot worse than Fu Wenduo. Comparing himself to Fu Wenduo was like looking for a dead end. He intended to practice himself and not shoot a gun in front of this person. Then he suddenly remembered one thing. "By the way, Fu Wenduo, Fu Wenzheng, and you are Fu Wengxian now. Are the names in your family taken from Xian Sheng Duo Ren?" A saying that means equals to gain the upper hand by a show of strength. Fu Wenduo, Fu Wengxian could barely still be heard but what type of name was Fu Wenren? Would someone really have that name? Tang Mo started to think. Fu Wenduo understood Tang Mo's meaning. "No, this is just an accident. Previously, Someone once joked about this matter, so I took Fu Wengxian as a pseudonym. I am 14 years older than Fu Wenzheng and his name is purely selected in terms of genealogy. It was supported to be my name. Tang Mo made a strange expression. Then how did it become his? My name is from my grandfather. He wanted to retake an island, so he gave this name to me. Tang Mo was stunned and looked up at Fu Wenduo. Fu Wenduo also looked down at him. The two men's eyes met and Fu Wenduo smiled. Aren't you going to practice shooting? Yes. Fu Wenduo moved to the side, making way for Tang Mo. However, Tang Mo had just walked past him when the black man ran back excitedly. Fu Wengxian, your brother has returned. Fu Wenduo was stunned while Tang Mo also turned around with surprise. 10 minutes later. Fu Wenzheng followed behind his captain in a depressed mood. This time the instance was an incredible waste of time. It wasn't too difficult, but it took too much time. They entered the instance on February 23rd and it was now March 5th. In addition, the people in the group seemed to be looking at him. Fu Wenzheng raised his head and looked at the tall man walking in front. The honest-looking young man found that Fu Wenzheng was watching him and quickly turned his head, pretending that he hadn't been peeking just now. Fu Wenzheng spoke in a depressed tone. Captain, why are you looking at me with those type of eyes? Chai Rong was a person who didn't like to lie. He said with a smile, it is nothing. You haven't been back for a long time and we all missed you. Fu Wenzheng asked, Captain, you haven't come back in a long time. Why didn't they miss you? They aren't looking at you like this. This type of lie wouldn't even fool Xiao Qiao. Chai Rong was just told by a member that Fu Wenxian's brother had come to find him. It was a great thing. After the Earth went online, everyone wanted to find their relatives and friends. Fu Wenzheng was the youngest member of the Nanjing group. He was intelligent and obedient and his ability was also very strong. They wanted to give this child a surprise and didn't tell him about his brother. Chai Rong didn't reply to Fu Wenzheng. Then the young man who had just been teasing Tang Mo saw him. Ah, Fu Wenzheng. Your name sounds familiar. Do you know a person called Fu Wenduo? Fu Wenzheng, it had been 4 months and they still weren't bored with this joke. As Fu Wenzheng walked into the base, he said righteously and eloquently to clear up their relationship. Fu Wenduo? The bastard that pulled all our Chinese players into the tower attack game? Who knows him? Captain Chai, I'm telling you. Don't let me see him. If I see him, I must tear him into 8 pieces, turn him into meat sauce and put him in. His voice suddenly stopped as the little boy's eyes widened with horror. Fu Wenduo, who had been standing at the door to greet his younger cousin only to be heard that he would be turned into meat sauce, smiled and waved towards Fu Wenzheng. Tang Mo wanted to laugh but he used great effort to hold it in. Fu Wenzheng stared stiffly at Fu Wenduo while Fu Wenduo stood at the door and lightly smiled. After watching for a long time, Fu Wenzheng left the base and entered again. Under the bright sunlight, this horrible man was still standing at the door. It wasn't an illusion. He was Fu Wenduo. Fu Wenzheng, the Nanjing group members hadn't had time to congratulate Fu Wenzheng when the child's face became serious and he said, in fact Captain Chai, I think that Fu Wenduo is also quite innocent. Captain Xiao even said it. Pulling us Chinese players into the game wasn't his plan, it was the Black Tower. You are wondering why I'm suddenly saying good things about him? No. I am being sincere right now. Fu Wenduo isn't at fault. The author has something to say, Xiao Fu, QAQ, brother, I am your little brother. It still isn't too late to fix this. Tang Tang, I'm just laughing and won't talk. Old Fu, laughing with his wife, smiley face.